why are core muscles important and what are the best exercises? What we're going to do in this tutorial is first look at the 3 main reasons why they're important, and then with each of those reasons we're then going to start looking at exercises that can help you achieve that reason why it's important. If you want to build core strength and stability, please do click the link below, go through to my How to Build Core Strength and Stability Beginners 12-week program. It's an online program, all the workouts are follow along. You start with the 12-week beginners program, and then once you've completed that, you can then move into the intermediate and advanced workouts, where we move into using various different bits of equipment like kettlebells, dumbbells, gym balls, resistance bands, so on and so forth. So if you want to build core strength and stability, please do click the link below. So why are core muscles important? Well, number 1, they absorb load and spare the spine. So if the core muscles aren't working appropriately, it can put excess load and force through the spine, which can then start to cause problems through the spine. So what we need to be able to do is get the muscles working well enough and together enough so they can start to absorb those loads, and then in some respects move on to part number 2, which is start transferring force. Because when we move into whole body movements, or even upper body and lower body movements, we start to move into transferring of force. So for example, a sprinter will need to generate power in the legs, but that will need to be controlled through the core, and they will also generate force through the arms, which will need to be absorbed and transferred through the torso. So each of those need to be transferred and absorbed through the torso. So it's very important that these muscles are working properly, because if it can't transfer the force effectively enough from the legs into the arms, for example, or from the arms into the legs, then it's going to put that load onto the spine, or some of that load is going to be put onto the spine. So not only are we trying to generate the force from the limbs, it then needs to be transferred through the torso and absorbed through the muscles. And then finally, as I've sort of indirectly described, it's going to reduce risk of injury to the spine. That doesn't mean it's going to prevent it. I don't believe there is any prevention, because there are too many variables about injury. So it can certainly reduce risk. And the better we can get the core working, the better we can absorb load, the better we can transfer force, the greater, or the more reduced risk we're going to have of injury to the spine. So let's look at reducing the risk. So what we've got to do, in some respects, is go back to basics. So this is why I set up the beginners program, because we need to go back to basics. We need to start from the ground and work our way up. What a lot of core programs do is they try and work you from the top down. So they get the latest exercise, the latest trend that everyone's interested in, but that generally is like at the top of the tree. It's not that it's any less valuable, it's just being done at the wrong time. So my programs are designed to start people from the ground and work their way up. So when we're talking about reducing risk of injury to the spine, we're thinking about the most basic exercises. So what we've got here is we've got a plank and we've got a side plank. So what we're trying to do here is bring together the abdominal wall, the rectus abdominis, the internal, the external obliques. You can also get the lats involved, because certainly with the plank, you can press the shoulders, you can press the shoulders down into the ribs, and that will activate the lats. So you'll get these muscles coming across the back working, and they'll be activating more, which is going to stabilize the spine. Obviously with the plank, it's well known that it will do rectus abdominis and then the obliques at the side. If you then sort of bring the shoulder blades and pull them together, you're going to be accessing the trapezius and the rhomboids. If you want, then you can then engage the glutes, you can squeeze those, and then what you've basically done is you're working the whole core to hold the spine in position. So we're starting to access more muscles from that one exercise. So when we're teaching, or certainly when I'm teaching the plank within the 12-week program, and there's a whole half-an-hour workshop on the plank where I teach you the proper teaching points, how to progress it, how to make it harder, how to make it easier, and any technique faults that you may have and how to correct them. So if you are wondering while you're doing the workout, am I doing the plank correctly, you can go to that workshop, which is included in the program, and you can work through that to make sure you're getting all of these muscles accessed and working properly. You've then got the side plank, which is focused a little bit more on the lateral musculature. So you've got internal and external obliques, a little bit more of QL. So you've got these working. You can get the lats working, because again, you can just press this shoulder down into the rib cage. You will get the glutes working a little bit more, because you'll get glute medius, glute minimus working down here. But what these types of exercises, it's not just these two exercises, there are more exercises that are at the sort of the beginning stages of the program. But these are just two examples of what the exercises are and how they go about reducing risk of injury to the spine, because we're starting to get all these muscles working together and get the core working as one unit. What we can then start talking about is moving it up a level. So we're now starting to absorb load and spare the spine. Now, how are we doing that? Well, what we're starting to do is we're starting to lift a limb. So one of the progressions for a plank is to simply just lift an arm off the floor and put it on your back. Now, when you do that, it's important, because what happens here is people will then go away and go, okay, I'll lift an arm up. They'll lift an arm up and their hips will be moving all over the place. That you're lifting the arm off the floor, so you're performing that part of the exercise, but you're not necessarily performing it correctly and getting the muscles to absorb the load. Because if the hips are moving, that's all to do with compensations. So when you lift the arm off the floor, you want the hips to stay and remain completely centered. What then happens is muscles have to work that much harder, and then they will start to absorb more load. If we then take it on, so that's sort of progression number one. If we then take it on to progression number two, we would then move it into like a rotation to take it up into a side plank, as you can see here. So what's happening now is we're getting the sort of the anterior musculature at the front, and then we're rolling up into the lateral musculature at the side. So we're now starting to move the load around. So we're starting to move into what will be the final one, in transferring it. But we're not quite doing it through upper body and lower body yet. We're doing it just around the core. So what we're then able to do is absorb load as we move. So this is now starting to build the pieces before we move into sort of upper and lower body movements, which we're going to talk about next. So it will sort of all come together in this final slide, which is where we're talking about these whole body movements and the ability to transfer force. So what we've got here are 3 exercises. So you've got a reverse chopping exercise. So I'm initiating the movement from the hips. I'm keeping the torso in the position, in a, let's just say, a static position. But what I am doing is I'm rotating the hips, I'm rotating the shoulders and lifting the arms. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm moving the spine. The spine is staying in its proper position, and what I'm doing is I'm using the muscles of the torso to transfer the force that I've created through the hips and the legs to go through the torso and out of the arms to be able to lift the weight necessary. Now, if my spine bends, that is known as an energy leak. So I'm leaking out some of that force that I've generated in my legs, so I then have to lift more with my arms. If I can maintain proper position of the torso, I can generate the force at the hips and the legs, and more of that force will get transferred through the arms, so I can then lift it more easily with the arms. So we're starting to talk about the transference of force when we talk about these whole body movements. The second one is more of an upper body movement. So what I'm doing is I'm kneeling on the floor, so I'm essentially taking my lower body out of action because I can't move it as much because I'm on my knees. And what I'm then doing is I'm moving my arms very fast from sort of down here up and across my body with a weight in my hands. I'm moving my arms fast, so I'm able to get the muscles activating, but also holding solid as I'm moving my arms. So what I'm doing is I'm able to transfer the force through the torso and then out of the arms. And then in the final exercise, it's sort of a reverse of that, which again is generating the force from the lower body as I swing this weight from one side and then back the way it came. So again, I'm not lifting the weight with my arms, I'm generating the force from the hips. The torso, again, is staying relatively in a static position, and then the weight is then essentially being just sort of maneuvered by the arms, not lifted by the arms, just maneuvered by it, and it's able to swing through and transfer the force from the lower body to the upper body. If you've enjoyed this content, please do hit the like button. If you've learned something new, hit the super like button. If you want to watch more of these videos, hit the subscribe button. And if you've got a question or a comment, please do leave it below and I'll do my best to get it answered as soon as possible.